Have you ever tried a pickleball paddle and thought to yourself, wow, this is so close to being perfect, but something is missing? Well, that's where a bit of customization could come in real handy. Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets Runners. Now, with pickleball's recent exponential growth, it was only a matter of time before players started realizing that there is a whole world of customization out there that can basically help you tailor a paddle exactly to your needs. Customization encompasses a variety of different things, and it can be as simple as just adding an overgrip and as complicated as perfectly matching two paddles in terms of swing weight, and balance. Adding anything to a paddle is customization, and the next thing we want to talk about is why customize? It's quite simple, really. Customization is there to help you solve a problem. Is your paddle slipping in your hands? Do you want more power? Do you want your paddle to last longer? Customization can help with any and all those things and is a great way to tailor a paddle exactly to your needs, but it can be a very slippery slope. We all get very excited by the idea of customization, and rightfully so. We're humans, we like things to be personalized. But it can also distract us from what's really important. Notice how I said customization can solve a problem. I didn't say it was going to make you a better player. The only way to become a better player is by spending the hours on court, and no amount of lead tape is ever going to change that. Keep that in mind when you start customizing, because it can pretty quickly become a complicated and confusing endeavor, and it's very easy to get caught up in it and lose track of what's actually important. So today I'm going to head into the store and cover several different categories of customization. I'm going to start off nice and easy with the simplest stuff, and then I'll end with some more complicated categories. A lot of these things you'll be able to do yourself, but remember that if you do want our help with anything customization related, you can always come visit us in store. We have years of experience customizing various different racket and paddle sports equipment, and we have the expertise, skills, and the tools to help you out. This is also a great time to remind you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, and let me know in the comments section down below what you want me to cover next time. Now, fair warning, this is going to be a very long video, so I am going to add chapters on the scroll bar here, so feel free to skip to whatever section interests you more. Without further ado, let's get into some customization. Okay, so we've made our way into the store here. I don't know what all I've covered in the studio, but basically we're going to start with paddle customization from the simplest things you can do to the most complex. And I've gathered a few paddles here, all raw carbon fiber paddles that you can see. Hopefully it shows up on camera, but they're pretty scuffed up on the actual carbon fiber top sheet. And one of the simplest ways to make your paddle feel more fresh is by using the CRBN Eraser. And it sounds maybe a little dumb, but it actually works extremely well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and rub away here. As you can tell, that side looks a lot cleaner than the non-erased side right there. Now, what's so important about taking away the scuff marks? Well, basically what happens when you make contact with the paddle face is that the ball's urethane gets caught inside the carbon weave, which basically clogs them, making them less gritty. So when you clean away that urethane, you're basically unclogging the pores, so you'll notice a pretty clear improvement in your paddle's spin performance. Obviously, erasing your paddle is only going to go so far in increasing that spin performance. Over time, the top sheet is just naturally going to wear away, chip away a little bit, but if you do want to keep it feeling fresh for the longest time possible, this is one of the simplest and the cheapest tools that you can use. We've got a paddle eraser, so if you live in Vancouver, you can always come by and we'll do it for you, but you can also buy one of these. I believe it's $20 or $30. Let me just check. $25, split the difference. But yeah, just a nice, easy way to get the paddle playing fresher than it was with all the scuff marks. The CRBN Eraser was great for renewing a paddle's life. Head protection tape is great for extending a paddle's life. Now, naturally, pickleball paddles are going to take a beating. It's part of the sport, and trying to avoid touching the ground is only going to have a negative impact on your gameplay. And that's why covering the edge guard is a really simple way of drastically increasing that lifespan. Now, protection tape is really nice because it's thin, it's light, so it's not going to dramatically alter the playability of a paddle, but it is much more robust than it looks, It holds up really well to contact with the ground. Now, obviously you will have to replace it once in a while, but when you do, it helps your paddle's lifespan dramatically. Now, applying head protection tape is definitely a little bit more complicated than using a carbon eraser, so I'm going to run you guys through it, but this is definitely something that we're more than happy to do for you. But basically, you kind of want to pick how much of the paddle you want to cover. Now, it doesn't have to be everything, but on this one, I'm going to make the head tape cover the whole paddle. Now, Selkirk has great protection tape because they've got different thicknesses that adapt really well to, say, a 14 millimeter paddle, also a 14 millimeter paddle, or a 16 millimeter paddle. This head protection tape is going to be a little bit too thick for this paddle, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half. Yeah. Okay, so I went and cut the head tape, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to apply. Now, got it. Okay, so start wherever you want it to start. I said I'd do pretty much the whole thing, but hold it there, and then you kind of want to pull it tight, but not too tight. Just want it to wrap around the edge. And then when you get to the end here, because you've pulled it taut, you're probably going to have some excess. That's fine. And then just flick that down there, and there you go. You have a protected pickleball paddle. Now we're going to talk a little bit about overgrips here. Now most of you have probably heard of overgrips, especially if you do come from a tennis, badminton background. But basically I've got two paddles here. One has no overgrip and one has an overgrip, albeit a very, very dirty one. Now the good thing about an overgrip, it kind of allows you to have a more personalized handle feel. Replacement grips are very basic, I guess you could say. Sometimes they have moisture wicking qualities like the perforations you see here, and on the Hyperion in particular, it's a little bit ribbed for better hand feel, I guess, for some people, but usually they're very plain, and that's where the overgrip comes in. An overgrip will allow you to kind of customize your handle hold better to your own hand. So I've got a couple overgrips here. Wilson Pro Overgrip is by far the most popular in the world. Pro Tour, recreational, everybody knows this overgrip. And my personal favorite, Turnigrip. Now, I kind of turn into a fire hydrant when I'm playing, and basically what's special about Turnigrip, it's extremely dry. So when moisture makes contact with it, it basically turns into a sort of chamois that becomes very grippy. It just combines really well with sweat, and that's what makes it feel grippier. As a general rule of thumb, dry overgrips, like Turnigrip, are better for people with really, really sweaty hands. But if you know you're not particularly sweaty, more on the average side of things, a more hybrid overgrip is the Wilson Pro Overgrip. Now, this definitely has a bit of that dry grittiness to it, but it's also tacky. So as long as you're not sweating profusely, it'll feel a little bit grippier than the Turnigrip. Pro Overgrip is also generally considered a little bit more comfortable than these really dry grips like Turna. So for most people, something like Wilson Pro Overgrip is going to be perfect. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and apply it on this Hyperion. Take it out of the pack. There's a little tab here. These are made to be easily applicable, so that little triangulated portion there. Take the sticky tab off. You start it wherever you want. Again, this is something, you know, we do 20, 30, 40 of these a day. So we're pretty used to applying overgrip, so we're more than happy to do it for you. But this is something that if you do it enough times, you'll become very accustomed to it. And eventually, honestly, you'll probably won't want anybody else doing your overgrips because you'll have a particular way of doing it, and it's really not all that difficult. Now, when you get to the end here, there's a couple different methods. Pickleball brands are really good about giving us elastic bands. Now, I'm gonna show you guys the more professional method, I guess you could say. Basically, I want to end it here. Now, what you can do is grab a little pen and mark where the two combine, and then you'll cut between those two little points, just like that. If you want to be super professional, you can use some finishing tape. The little Wilson logos that you see on the grips are finishing tape. As a retail store, we've always got finishing tape somewhere. There you go. There you have it, the little rubber band, and yeah, got a nice new grip. Okay, so the other really great thing about an overgrip is that it protects the more expensive base grip, the replacement grip. As you can see, overgrips come in packs of 3. They generally cost about $10. Replacement grips cost usually 12 to 15, and they only come in packs of 1. So The overgrip, if you replace it often enough, it'll protect that base grip. I'm gonna take this one off and you're gonna see the base grip here is in really good shape. It looks almost brand new there, and that's just because, you know, there's been an overgrip on it the whole time, protecting it, so you won't have to replace this. You'll have to replace this every so often. This one was probably a little too old. I'd say every 10 to 15 times you go out and play, depending on how much you sweat. That's how often you should replace your overgrip. And because it comes in packs of 3, you know, every 45 times. Now there is one more overgrip I want to mention before we move on to the next customization section. That's Tourna Mega Tack. Now these aren't the same. People often call this Tourna Grip. It's actually original XL from the brand Tourna, because Tourna also has other grips and they are very different. Mega Tack is probably the stickiest grip you could ever hold. It's sticky to the point where when you touch it, you're gonna wanna wash your hands right afterwards. It's pretty disgusting, but, and this is probably more for people with really dry hands who just want to feel like their grip is glued to their hand, this could be the option. So it could take some time to kind of land on which grip works best for you. But as a general rule of thumb, really sweaty hands, go for a dry grip like Tourna Original XL. If you consider your hands average in terms of moisture, go for Pro Overgrip from Wilson. And if you just want the stickiest thing out there, people swear by this. I personally don't understand it, but some people really like it. Go ahead and try Mega Tack. Okay, so overgrips, paddle erasers, protection tape, those are all simple enough to explain. We're going to shift now to a lot more techie of a conversation, and that's because we're going to talk about lead tape. Now, okay, lead tape excites everybody. It excites me, but before we move on, I do need to preface this by saying lead tape will not be the solution to all your problems on the pickleball court. It's not going to make you play better. It may adapt a paddle more towards your game, but the only thing that's gonna help you play better is hours spent on court. If you get down that slippery slope of playing around with lead tape all over the paddle, it becomes frustrating. You don't know what you like, you don't remember what worked in the first place. It just becomes a frustrating endeavor. Stop, refocus, take all the lead off, go out and play some pickleball, and then maybe come back and try it again. But without further ado, let's get into what lead tape can do, where to put it, and what putting it where will do. Okay, so basically the idea behind lead tape is a solution to a problem. So we're going to start at the highest part of the paddle here. What applying lead there is going to do is boost power and spin because you're boosting swing weight so much. Now, the higher up you put lead on the paddle, the more consequential of an effect it's going to have on playability, but the least effect it's going to have on overall static weight. So basically, if you want to keep your paddle's static weight the same, but you just feel like you want a little bit more pop, a little bit more spin potential, you're gonna want to apply 1/2-inch lead tape to the top of your paddle. You want to start with a little bit and then maybe keep adding until you find the sweet spot. But here's what I'll say, and I'm going to start applying it while I talk, but lead at the 12 o'clock position can be extremely beneficial to your game because basically the contact between your paddle and the ball is basically the old force equals mass times acceleration equation. So in that equation, force is spin and power, both kind of they're separate things, but those are both force. Acceleration is going to be the speed at which you accelerate the paddle face through contact, so basically your swing speed. And the mass is the swing weight behind the ball. But basically the idea behind finding your optimal swing weight is kind of finding that optimal swing speed to swing weight equilibrium. So the next place you want to add weight is to the sides of the paddle. Now, why do you want to add weight to the sides of the paddle? The number one reason is because you want to expand the size of your sweet spot. So basically, when you add lead anywhere on the paddle, you are moving the sweet spot towards that lead. So let's go back to this 12 o'clock here for a second. Basically, what adding weight here has done is move the sweet spot from, say it was here before lead, you've just moved it up a little bit. Your new sweet spot's going to be here. So if you add weight to the sides, here and here, you're going to move the sweet spot outwards and outwards, basically expanding it. So for those of you who really like a paddle, but maybe you find it a little bit too punishing outside of the sweet spot, you want to expand that sweet spot a little bit, lead tape at the 3 and 9 o'clock positions could be the perfect way to do that. Now, as usual here, the more you add, the more consequential effect on playability that it's going to have. But like it was with the 12 o'clock position, You don't want to go too much because eventually you're going to make your paddle too clunky and then it won't be forgiving because you just can't swing it properly. Now with the 3 and 9 o'clock position, you want to kind of match the same amount on both sides. Now, it's almost perfectly matched there. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those. And there you go. You've added lead to the sides, 3 and 9. Okay, so the next area we're going to take a look at is an area that's become very popular amongst a lot of the pros. I know Ben Johns adds lead here. That's for a couple of reasons. Now, I tactically chose 3 thermoform paddles here because thermoform paddles are great. You get immense power and spin with them. The problem is they can be a little bit instantaneously launchy, especially in stock form. So you want to soften them up a little bit. And the best way to do that is by adding the most amount of weight possible. Basically, the more mass you have on the paddle face, the harder it's going to crush the ball, basically meaning the ball goes deeper into the paddle bed, making the dwell time longer and the paddle relatively softer. Obviously, if I went and added a bunch of lead tape at 12 o'clock to make the paddle face as heavy as possible, that'd be great, but it would affect playability a lot. So what we want to do to have the least effect on other aspects of playability is we want to apply it as far down the paddle face as possible. So we'll put another 6 inches here on the Vatic Pro V7, and you want to start where the handle meets the paddle face there. And yeah, let's just say 6 inches, so I'll mark that there. And there you go. So again, adding it here, it's just going to make the paddle feel a little bit softer, and it's going to have the least effect on playability, maneuverability, and anything else, really. Now, earlier in the year, when I reviewed the Carbon 1X Power, I mentioned that thermoform paddles were very close to becoming cheat codes in pickleball when you do add lead right here. The reason I said that back then is because they have undeniably higher amounts of power and spin compared to standard molds, but where they do lack compared to standard molds is obviously in softness and control. When you do boost mass behind the ball by adding the lead tape, especially here, it gives them an element of softness. Okay, it might still not be as soft as thick Selkirk paddles or traditionally molded thick paddles, but they still gain enough softness to where they're competitive in the soft game. Whether that's the way the industry goes permanently, we'll see. I do think there's still a place for softer paddles. Maybe not for my game personally, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, so that was kind of the lead tape conversation. Now, again, I do want to emphasize that it is a slippery slope. You don't want to start thinking that you missed a shot because you didn't have enough lead or because the weight distribution was off. Believe me, I've been there in all the racket sports that I play, blaming anything but my technique. So if you do end up going too far down that rabbit hole, remember to recenter yourself, focus on playing the pickleball, and then you can tackle the lead tape equation a little bit later. Okay, so I'm just editing this video and I realized there's one thing I forgot to mention, and I don't know how I forgot to mention this, but obviously lead tape has a bit of a bad reputation because it's lead. Now I do want to say that's sometimes a little bit over exaggerated. Unless you start licking your fingers after working with lead, you will generally be fine. But I do just want to say be careful when you are working with lead. If you do decide to do this yourself, it is a toxic substance. So don't go touching your eyes, wash your hands quickly after working with it. But in general, you'll be okay. The other thing you probably want to do if you put lead tape on your paddle is to put protection tape over that lead tape, because you don't know when you're going to be touching your edge guard. It's just better to not have exposed lead. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, protection tape is really good for protecting the paddle, and it'll protect the lead tape, so you don't have to reapply it all the time. So yeah, just be careful when you're playing with lead, wash your hands after touching it, and protect your paddle so that it's not exposed. Okay, so the last area we are going to touch on is paddle matching. Now, I'm going to move the camera over to this beautiful diagnostic machine here, because this little weapon is going to help us in our paddle matching journey. So as pickleball evolves, the competitive scene is obviously also going to evolve, and with that is going to come the need for advanced players to have multiple paddles. So basically over the course of a match, it's possible that your paddle loses playability, whether that's because it becomes a little bit too soft or because it loses spin, and you want to go to your secondary so that you can be still just as competitive. Now, the problem with that is that despite paddles maybe having the same specs on paper, in practice, that's not always the case because manufacturing tolerances exist. So basically, let's just say I had two Vatic Pro V7s here. Actually, I do have two Vatic Pro V7s, so we don't really have to just say it. But the reality is there's going to be manufacturing tolerances where they're going to be a little bit different. So you get into a match, you need to switch up your paddle, and oh my God, my paddle doesn't feel the way it felt. I wish I'd gotten them matched. This is one of those things that requires nearly scientific level of precision, and that's where a diagnostic machine like this comes into play. This is the brand new Wilson Biodo Tube Pro. The beauty of this machine is that it also has a matching feature. We throw one of these paddles on the machine, take it off, and throw the other one on, and it's going to basically tell us exactly where we need to apply lead to match them perfectly in all aspects. So that's pretty cool because it basically means we don't have to use the old trial and error method, which was a lot of fun for many years, but this thing makes our life a heck of a lot easier. Now, the one thing I will say for pickleball in particular is that if you do get a few match paddles, you don't necessarily want to use one paddle until it goes bad and switch to the next one, because that paddle will have changed a lot over time. It'll have softened up a little bit. It'll have lost a bit of its spin. Whatever it may be, it will have changed. So if you do have multiple match paddles, what you probably want to do is every hour switch to the next one. That way they'll wear out evenly, so there'll be no stark playability difference when you go from one match paddle to the other one. So yeah, for pickleball in particular, you want to keep those match paddles rotating pretty consistently through, I guess you could say. Okay, so obviously that was a lot to digest, but hopefully I was able to help shed some light on the Pandora's box that is customization. As you can tell, customization can be an extremely complicated endeavor, but it can also be the difference between a paddle that works well and a paddle that works perfectly for you. As we continue to do reviews and comparisons, I'll do a better job of emphasizing whatever customization I did do to paddles, if I did customize them, and maybe the customization that I did could work for you as well. For now though, that is going to be it from us today. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that any of the paddles we cover on this channel, you can demo in store, or you can check them out online at racketsandrunners.ca.